The Dragon Emperor beholds a human waitress carrying his injured hatchling. The neon lights of New Arcturus Station flickered through the viewing ports as Sarah Chen balanced 3 steaming plates on her left arm while carrying a tray of exotic alien beverages in her right hand. The cosmic diner never slept, serving species from across the galaxy at all hours of the station's artificial day cycle. Sarah had worked here for 2 years, ever since humanity joined the Galactic Trade Federation, and she thought she had seen every possible combination of weird alien customers. She was wrong. The emergency klaxons started wailing just as she delivered the fermented squid tentacles to Table 7. Through the diner's panoramic windows, she could see ships scrambling in the distance, their engines painting streaks of blue and white across the star field. Something big was happening, but Sarah had learned not to panic every time the station went on alert. Pirates, diplomatic incidents, or cargo ship accidents happened weekly in this sector. "Sarah, honey, you might want to take your break early today," called out Marcus, the diner's owner, from behind the counter. His usually cheerful face looked pale as he watched the news feeds on his tablet. "Why? What's going on?" Sarah asked, wiping her hands on her apron. Before Marcus could answer, the station's communication system crackled to life. "Attention all residents of New Arcturus Station. We are receiving an unscheduled diplomatic vessel. The Drakmaran Imperial flagship requests immediate docking privileges. All civilian traffic is suspended." "This is not a drill." Sarah felt her stomach drop. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Drakmaran Empire. They were the dragons of space, an ancient civilization that controlled nearly a third of the known galaxy. Proud, fierce, and absolutely terrifying. They rarely interacted with younger species like humanity. Most humans had never seen a Drakmaran in person, and those who had usually didn't live to tell about it. The diner fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the air recyclers. Even the usually boisterous Rigelian miners at Table 12 stopped their card game to stare out the windows. Sarah could see it now, a massive ship approaching the station. It looked like a mountain of black metal and crystalline spires, easily 10 times larger than anything else in the docking bays. "Everyone just stay calm and keep working," Marcus announced, though his voice cracked slightly. "Dragons or no dragons, people still need to eat." Sarah nodded and picked up another order, trying to focus on her work. The Galactic Trade Federation had strict neutrality laws. As long as everyone minded their own business, there shouldn't be any trouble. She delivered the Andromedan algae soup to Table 4 and was heading back to the kitchen when she heard it. A sound that made her blood freeze. A high-pitched, keening wail echoed through the station's corridors. It was the sound of something in terrible pain, something young and frightened. The cry seemed to cut right through the metal walls and grab at Sarah's heart. She wasn't the only one who heard it. Every parent in the diner, regardless of species, turned toward the sound with the same expression of concern. That was the universal sound of a child in distress. The wailing continued, growing closer. Through the diner's main entrance, Sarah could see a small crowd gathering in the station's central plaza. Security officers were trying to maintain order, but everyone was craning their necks to see what was happening. Then she saw it. A small creature, no bigger than a house cat, came tumbling through the crowd. It had golden scales that caught the artificial light, tiny wings that fluttered uselessly, and eyes like liquid amber. Blood was seeping from a gash along its side, and it left a small trail of crimson droplets as it stumbled forward. Sarah recognized it immediately from her xenobiology classes. A Drakmaran hatchling, a baby dragon. The security officers were advancing on the little creature with stun weapons drawn, but they moved slowly, clearly terrified of touching it. Everyone knew that harming a member of the Drakmaran royal family was punishable by the complete annihilation of your home planet. The hatchling stumbled again, its cries growing weaker. It was clearly exhausted and losing blood fast. The security team was still arguing about what to do, unwilling to risk touching it, but equally unwilling to let it bleed to death on their watch. Sarah didn't think. She just moved. She pushed through the diner's doors and jogged toward the injured creature. The security officers shouted warnings at her, but she ignored them. The hatchling saw her coming and tried to back away, but it was too weak to move far. "Hey there, little one," Sarah said softly, crouching down slowly. "You're hurt pretty bad, aren't you?" The hatchling's amber eyes fixed on her face. Up close, Sarah could see intelligence there, far more than any earth animal would have. This wasn't just a creature, it was a person. A very young, very scared person who happened to have scales and wings. "I'm not going to hurt you," Sarah continued in the same gentle tone she used with her nephew back on Earth. "I just want to help." Very carefully, she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a clean napkin. The hatchling flinched when she moved, but didn't try to run. Sarah gently pressed the napkin against the bleeding wound on its side. The little dragon made a soft chirping sound, almost like a bird. Its breathing was getting more labored, and Sarah could see that the wound was deeper than she had first thought. "Okay, sweetie, I'm going to pick you up now," Sarah said. "Just stay calm." She slipped her hands under the hatchling, surprised by how warm it was. Its scales felt like smooth, warm metal, and she could feel its rapid heartbeat against her palms. The little creature was heavier than it looked, but still small enough that she could cradle it easily in her arms. The moment she lifted it, the hatchling seemed to relax slightly. It pressed its small head against her chest and made another soft, chirping sound, this one less distressed. "There we go," Sarah murmured. "You're safe now." The security officers were still standing around looking helpless, but Sarah ignored them. She turned and walked back toward the diner, the injured hatchling cradled protectively in her arms. That's when she felt it. A presence so massive and ancient that it seemed to press against her mind like a physical weight. The temperature in the corridor dropped 10 degrees in an instant, and every person in sight suddenly froze in place. Sarah turned slowly, still holding the hatchling, and found herself looking up at the most magnificent and terrifying sight she had ever seen. The Dragon Emperor himself had arrived. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, his scales a deep midnight blue that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His eyes were like twin stars, burning with an inner fire that spoke of age beyond human comprehension. Massive wings, folded against his back, cast shadows that seemed to move independently. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the metal deck plates of the station. "Who dares to touch my air?" Every human, alien, and artificial intelligence in the immediate area dropped to their knees or whatever equivalent their species had for showing submission. Even the station's gravity seemed heavier in his presence. Everyone except Sarah. She stood there holding the injured hatchling and looked the Dragon Emperor directly in his burning eyes. "Your baby is hurt," she said simply. "He needs medical attention." For a long moment that felt like an eternity, the Emperor stared at her. Sarah could feel the weight of his gaze, as if he was looking not just at her, but through her, examining every thought and memory she had ever had. The hatchling in her arms made another soft sound and pressed closer to her warmth. Then, incredibly, the Dragon Emperor's expression softened slightly. "You are human," he said, and there was something like surprise in his ancient voice. "Yes, sir," Sarah replied, still maintaining eye contact. "And you're a father whose child is bleeding. Species doesn't matter much when a baby needs help." The Emperor's massive head tilted slightly, studying her with new interest. "You show no fear." "I'm terrified," Sarah admitted honestly. "But he's hurt, and fear isn't going to help him get better." For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Dragon Emperor smiled. It was a small expression, barely visible but unmistakable. "Indeed," he said. "Show me to your medical facilities, human, and thank you." As Sarah led the most powerful being in the galaxy toward the station's medical bay, she couldn't help but think that her shift was definitely not going according to plan. The little hatchling in her arms had stopped bleeding and was making soft, contented sounds as it dozed against her chest. Behind them, the Dragon Emperor followed, his massive presence parting crowds like a ship through water. But his eyes never left the human waitress who had dared to help his child without thought for the consequences. Something had changed in that moment, though none of them could have predicted how much. Dr. Elizabeth Vance had seen many strange things during her 15 years as the chief medical officer of New Arcturus Station, but nothing had prepared her for the sight of a human waitress walking into her medical bay, followed by a legend. The Dragon Emperor filled the doorway like a living shadow, his presence making the advanced medical equipment seem suddenly fragile and primitive. Dr. Vance had read every available file on Drakmaran physiology, but seeing one in person was overwhelming. The sheer scale of him, the way reality seemed to bend slightly around his form, the ancient intelligence burning in those stellar eyes. "Doctor," Sarah said, her voice remarkably steady, "this little one needs help." Dr. Vance forced herself to focus on the patient rather than the impossibly powerful being watching her every move. The hatchling in Sarah's arms was indeed in bad shape. The wound had reopened during transport and the little creature's breathing was shallow and rapid. "Bring him to examination table 3, Dr. Vance said, falling back on her medical training. "The one with the universal life support systems." As Sarah gently placed the hatchling on the bio bed, it made a distressed sound and tried to follow her. Its tiny claws scraped against the metal surface as it attempted to crawl back toward the warmth and safety of her arms. "He doesn't want me to leave," Sarah observed, placing a gentle hand on the little dragon's head. Immediately it calmed and settled back down on the examination table. "Fascinating," Dr. Vance murmured as her scanners began analyzing the hatchling's vital signs. "His stress levels dropped significantly when you touched him. Dragons are known to imprint on their caretakers, but I've never seen it happen with a different species before." "Is that a problem?" Sarah asked, glancing nervously at the Emperor. The massive dragon had been silent since entering the medical bay, watching the proceedings with an intensity that made the air itself feel charged. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful rather than angry. "In all my centuries, I have never seen one of my people bond with an alien," he said. "This is unprecedented." Dr. Vance's scans revealed the extent of the hatchling's injuries. "He has a deep laceration along his left flank, possible internal bleeding, and he's severely dehydrated. What happened to him?" The Emperor's expression darkened, and the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. "An assassination attempt. Enemies of the Empire tried to use my son to send a message. They failed, but not before—" He gestured toward the injured hatchling. "Assassination?" Sarah's voice was sharp with outrage. "He's just a baby." "Politics in the Empire can be brutal," the Emperor said. "Those who oppose my rule know that harming my heir would cause me great pain. They care nothing for his age or innocence." Dr. Vance began preparing her surgical instruments, but paused when she realized the complexity of the situation. "Your Majesty, I need to ask about Drakmaran physiology. My files are limited, and I want to make sure I don't accidentally harm him." "Ask your questions, physician," the Emperor said. "Time grows short." "His blood chemistry, can he safely receive synthetic plasma? What about anesthesia? And these scales around the wound, if I need to remove some for surgery?" "You may proceed as you would with any reptilian species," the Emperor replied. "Our biology is more adaptable than most realize. However," he paused, looking at Sarah, "he has bonded with the human. If possible, she should remain close during the procedure. Her presence will ease his distress." Sarah looked surprised. "Me?" But I don't know anything about surgery or— You don't need to know medicine, Dr. Vance explained as she began setting up her equipment. You just need to be here. Sometimes the most important part of healing isn't the technology, it's having someone who cares nearby. As Dr. Vance worked, Sarah kept her hand gently resting on the hatchling's head, speaking to him in soft, comforting tones. The little dragon's eyes stayed fixed on her face, and his vital signs remained stable despite the invasive procedures. "What's his name?" Sarah asked during a quiet moment in the surgery. The Emperor was silent for so long that Sarah wondered if she had overstepped some boundary. When he finally spoke, his voice carried an emotion she couldn't quite identify. "He has not yet chosen his name," the Emperor said. "In our culture, hatchlings remain nameless until they perform their first act of courage or wisdom. Only then do they earn the right to choose what they will be called." "So he's just hatchling or son until then?" "Essentially, yes. Though—" The Emperor paused again, studying Sarah's face. "He has never shown such trust to anyone before, not even to me. This bonding, this courage to accept help from an unknown species, perhaps this is his first act of wisdom." Dr. Vance looked up from her work. "The internal bleeding was minor, thankfully. I've sealed the major laceration and given him antibiotics and pain medication. He should make a full recovery, but he'll need several days of rest." "Excellent," the Emperor said, and for the first time since arriving, he seemed to relax slightly. "Name your price, physician." "The Drakmaran Empire honors its debts." "Actually," Dr. Vance said, glancing at Sarah, "I think the person you owe is her. I just did the surgery. She's the one who saved his life." The Emperor's burning gaze turned to Sarah, who was still gently stroking the now sleeping hatchling's head. "Indeed, human, you have preserved the life of my heir. In doing so, you have honored yourself and your species. What would you ask of me in return?" Sarah looked confused. "Ask of you? I don't understand." "A life debt," the Emperor explained. "You saved my son without thought of reward, but honor demands that the debt be acknowledged. Name any price, and if it is within my power, it shall be yours." Sarah considered this for a long moment, then smiled. "Can I visit him while he recovers? He seems to like having me around, and I'd hate for him to wake up scared and alone." The Emperor stared at her in complete silence for nearly a full minute. Dr. Vance found herself holding her breath, wondering if somehow Sarah had given the wrong answer. Finally, the Emperor spoke, and there was something like wonder in his ancient voice. "Of all the possibilities in the galaxy, of all the wealth and power I could offer, you ask only to spend time with an injured child?" "Well, yeah," Sarah said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "He's hurt and scared. Nobody should have to face that alone, especially not a little kid." The Emperor was quiet again, but this time Dr. Vance could see something changing in his expression. When he spoke again, his voice was softer than it had been since his arrival. "In 3,000 years of life, I have met beings of every species in the galaxy. I have seen the highest nobility and the deepest cruelty that sentient life can offer. But never have I encountered such pure compassion." He approached the examination table where his son lay sleeping, Sarah's hand still resting protectively on the little dragon's head. "Human," he said formally, "I am Zarathrax Vorthak, Dragon Emperor of the Drakmaran realm, Keeper of the Stellar Flames, and Guardian of the Ancient Ways, but you may call me Zara." "And you are?" "Sarah Chen," she replied, slightly overwhelmed by the formal introduction. "Waitress, coffee expert, and apparently temporary dragon babysitter." For the second time that day, the Dragon Emperor smiled. This time it was broader and genuinely amused. "Sarah Chen," he repeated, as if testing how the name felt. "Tell me, would you consider remaining on this station for the duration of my son's recovery?" I can arrange for suitable compensation and accommodations. I live here anyway, Sarah said, and honestly, I'd love to help. But can I ask you something? Anything. Why were you so far from home with just a baby? Seems like a dangerous galaxy for someone so small to be traveling. The Emperor's expression grew serious again. That, Sarah Chen, is a longer story, one that perhaps you should hear, given that you are now part of it whether you intended to be or not. As the medical equipment hummed quietly around them, and the little hatchling slept peacefully under Sarah's protective touch, the Dragon Emperor began to speak of politics, ancient enemies, and a conspiracy that threatened not just his family, but the balance of power throughout the galaxy. Sarah listened, absently stroking the soft scales of the sleeping dragonette, and wondered how her simple life had suddenly become so complicated. But looking down at the peaceful expression on the little creature's face, she knew she wouldn't change a thing. 3 days later, Sarah sat in the luxury suite that Emperor Zara had arranged for his son's recovery, watching the little dragon practice flying around the room. His wound had healed remarkably fast, and his energy had returned with a vengeance. What Dr. Vance had said about the bonding was proving to be absolutely true. The hatchling, who had started responding to the nickname Spark that Sarah had given him, rarely strayed more than a few meters from her side. "Higher, Spark," Sarah encouraged as he attempted a loop in the air. "You've almost got it!" The little dragon chirped happily and tried again, this time managing a complete somersault before landing gracefully on the back of the sofa. He looked at Sarah expectantly, clearly waiting for praise. "That was perfect!" Sarah laughed, offering him a piece of the crystallized fruit that had become his favorite treat. "You're going to be an amazing flyer when you grow up." Spark puffed out his tiny chest with pride and then settled down next to Sarah, curling up against her side like a scaly cat. In the 3 days since his injury, he had grown noticeably larger and stronger. Sarah estimated he was now about the size of a small dog rather than a house cat. The door chimed, and Emperor Zara entered, carrying what appeared to be official documents. His expression was troubled, and Sarah felt a knot form in her stomach. "Is everything all right?" she asked. Zara looked at his son, who was now dozing contentedly against Sarah's arm, and sighed heavily. "I have received word from the Imperial Council. The situation at home grows worse." Over the past few days, Zara had explained the political crisis facing the Drakmaran Empire. A coalition of rival noble houses, led by his own brother Malthrex, was challenging his rule. They claimed that Zara had grown weak, too willing to engage in diplomacy with younger species rather than conquering them outright. "The assassination attempt was meant to lure me away from the capital," Zara continued. "While I rushed to save my son, Malthrex moved against my loyal houses. 3 star systems have already declared for him." Sarah felt cold dread wash over her. "What does that mean for Spark?" "If Malthrex takes the throne, my son will be executed as a potential threat to his rule. It is traditional in such situations." "That's horrible," Sarah said, unconsciously pulling the sleeping hatchling closer to her. "Indeed, which is why I must ask something of you that I have no right to ask." Sarah looked up at him, seeing something she had never expected to see in the eyes of the mighty Dragon Emperor. Fear. Not for himself, but for his child. "What do you need?" she asked without hesitation. "I must return to the Empire to face Malthrex. If I do not, he will eventually come here with a fleet to claim my son. But taking Spark with me would be signing his death warrant. Malthrex's assassins are everywhere in Imperial space." Sarah felt her heart stop. "You want to leave him here?" "I want to leave him with you," Zara said quietly. "You are the only person in the galaxy that he trusts completely. More than that, you are someone I trust completely." "But I'm just a waitress," Sarah protested. I don't know how to raise a dragon prince. I don't know anything about your politics or your culture or... You know how to show compassion to a frightened child? Zara interrupted. You know how to put someone else's needs before your own safety. You know how to love without expecting anything in return. These are not common traits in the galaxy, Sarah Chen. They are precious beyond measure. Sarah looked down at Spark, who had woken up and was listening to the conversation with those intelligent amber eyes. Did he understand what they were talking about? How much did young dragons comprehend? How long? She asked. I do not know. Months, perhaps years. Civil wars are unpredictable things. And if you don't win? Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then you would need to raise him as your own. Teach him to live as a human rather than as a dragon emperor. It would not be the life I had planned for him, but it would be a life. And perhaps that would be enough. Sarah felt tears stinging her eyes. The magnitude of what he was asking was overwhelming, but when she looked at Spark, who was now nuzzling against her hand with complete trust, she knew there was only one answer she could give. Okay, she said simply. Sarah, you cannot possibly understand what you are agreeing to. I understand that there's a little boy who needs someone to take care of him, Sarah said firmly. I understand that his father loves him enough to give him up to keep him safe. And I understand that I care about him too much to let anything happen to him. Spark climbed up onto Sarah's lap and pressed his small head against her chest, making the soft chirping sound that meant he was happy and content. He has chosen, Zara said wonderingly. In all our recorded history, no heir to the dragon throne has ever chosen to bond with an alien species. Yet here he is, selecting a human as his guardian and protector. Maybe that's his first act of wisdom, Sarah suggested, remembering their earlier conversation about dragon naming traditions. Choosing love over politics. Zara stared at her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Yes, I think it is. Over the next few hours, Zara transferred an enormous sum of credits to Sarah's account, more money than she could spend in several lifetimes. He also provided her with detailed files about dragon physiology, dietary needs, and cultural traditions. If the worst happens, he said, these will help you raise him properly. But Sarah, I need you to promise me something. What? Never let him forget who he is. He is Zarathrax's son, heir to an empire that spans a third of the galaxy. Whether he claims that inheritance or chooses a different path, he should make that choice knowing his true identity. I promise, Sarah said. As Zara prepared to leave, Spark seemed to sense what was happening. He flew from Sarah's shoulder to his father's massive hand, chirping urgently. I know, little one, Zara said softly, his voice rough with emotion. I do not want to leave you either, but sometimes we must be brave to protect those we love. Spark looked back and forth between his father and Sarah, then made a decision that surprised everyone. He flew back to Sarah and settled protectively on her shoulder, facing his father but making it clear where his loyalty now lay. For the third time since Sarah had met him, the Dragon Emperor smiled. This time there were tears in his ancient eyes. He has chosen well, Zara said. Goodbye, my son. Be wise, be brave, and remember that you are loved. He turned to Sarah. And you, Sarah Chen, remember that you have the friendship of the Dragon Emperor for all time. Whatever happens in the war ahead, that bond will endure. After Zara left, Sarah sat in the quiet luxury suite with a baby dragon on her shoulder and a future she had never imagined stretching out before her. Spark sensed her uncertainty and nuzzled against her neck, making comforting sounds. Well, little guy, she said, gently stroking his scales, I guess it's just you and me now. What do you say we start with some basic flying lessons? Spark chirped enthusiastically and launched himself into the air, performing a perfect loop before landing on the coffee table and looking at her expectantly. Sarah laughed despite everything. "Show off. Okay, let's see what else you can do." As she watched the little dragon play, Sarah thought about the strange turn her life had taken. 3 days ago, she had been a simple waitress serving aliens their meals. Now she was the guardian of an imperial heir, a single human woman responsible for raising the future of an entire empire. It should have been terrifying. Instead, watching Spark practice his aerial maneuvers with determination and joy, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years: purpose. Outside the viewing ports, the stars wheeled in their eternal dance, and somewhere among them, a civil war was beginning that would reshape the galaxy. But in this small room, a human woman and a dragon prince were building a bond that would prove stronger than politics, stronger than tradition, and strong enough to change the course of history itself. Spark landed on Sarah's outstretched hand and looked up at her with those intelligent amber eyes as if asking a question. "Yeah, buddy," Sarah said softly. "We're going to be just fine, both of us." The little dragon purred, a sound like distant thunder, and settled down to sleep in the palm of her hand. For the first time in days, Sarah allowed herself to truly relax. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities, and probably new dangers. But tonight she was simply Sarah Chen, protector of dragons and friend to emperors, sitting in a space station restaurant at the edge of known space, holding the future in her hands. And for now, that was enough.